Hey, it's Eric G. Around the House is sponsored by Baldwin Hardware. For 75 years, Baldwin Hardware has been known for its first-class quality and craftsmanship in door and cabinetry hardware. As an alumnus of the Baldwin Hardware Design Council, I can say I have seen the details and quality from design to the finished product. If you're looking for a new style and old-world craftsmanship, I can tell you there is only one Baldwin Hardware. Check out what would look great in your home at baldwinhardware.com.
It's Around the House.
You do a lot with Festool.
Yeah.
And if I was sitting at the bar, that's the top shelf liquor right there of the high quality stuff. And tell you what, those guys, it's gorgeous stuff, my friend. It is gorgeous stuff.
When you say that, it's funny because like that's one of the reasons why I like it so much is because it looks good.
It's sexy.
And it's super sexy, man. And there's so many. So we're re-outfitting our one of our vans for home care, and it's kind of a hodgepodge of different tools, and everything does its job, like 100%. Sure. Like he's got a cart, it goes in, like the clients are like, oh, this is super organized. And we had a meeting, and I'm like, man, kind of want it to be gray and gray.
When it comes to remodeling and renovating your home, there is a lot to know, but we've got you covered. This is Around the House.
Welcome to the Around the House show. This is where we talk everything about your house every single week. Thanks for joining us. We got a special guest in the studio today, Nick Schiffer. Welcome to Around the House, man.
What's up, man? I'm glad to be here. Appreciate it.
Happy to have you. I have seen you on the different NHB stages and everything else. You and I like kind of cross paths between friends and stuff, but never have really spent time together.
Yeah, I as I dug into like who you are and how like what you do in the industry, I'm like, how have we not met?
Right?
It's interesting, especially I feel like it's so, even when you go to the like IBS and things like that, I feel like I see the same people. And
right?
it's people that even live in Boston that I never see in Boston. But then I'll go to the 1 million square foot trade show and I'll bump into them 6 times.
How does that work, right?
Yeah, I don't know. So
yeah, we have a lot of common friends. And it's hilarious. Well, man, you have been doing so much good stuff out there with NS Builders. And I mean, you're just legendary in the Boston scene across the U.S. as well. But let's talk about you and your chops a little bit because
sure, you
do a lot of the stuff that I love. My background, kitchen designer for 30 years. So I did a lot of the interior modeling stuff, a lot of that kind of stuff that you've done on the remodeling side as well, that luxury home.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for me, especially when we started growing as a business and outside of just being a carpenter or a carpentry business, that's where I really kind of sat my role into kind of helping design. I'm not a designer. I'm not an architect. I don't have any licensing or training in it, but that's where I started really pushing the level of detail and how we executed particular things. And that's where, a lot of my mind just kind of got encapsulated by how do we do this better? How do we make this detail better or cooler? And most of the time that works out for me. There's been a handful of times where I make something quote unquote cooler and it becomes wildly expensive and a nightmare to maintain. And my guys hate me for it. But the point is I like to challenge the normal way of doing something and constantly question, like, how do we do this better? What can we do to make this better?
Well, and you come from a part of the country where the craft is big,
Yeah.
I mean, I've worked all over the country with different people like you have, and there's just something about the old world craftsmanship of the Northeast, and it's cool.
It is. And I guess part of me is a little bit naive to that, where I just think it's normal. And then when I do travel to different parts of the country, people are like, yeah, you're so lucky, man. Like craftsmanship is like still a thing up there. Like, what do you mean? Like, I'm walking a project here in California and this is pretty awesome. I'm like, yeah, man, but it's just different. It's, it's not put together the same way with the same type of people. There's not that many of them, in different parts of the country. And, and I think about that when we talk about it on the Modern Craftsman. It's, we oftentimes talk about the Northeast and like our market. And even when we talk about money, it's really difficult to understand that, a lot of what we talk about doesn't relate to the majority of the population.
It's tough.
Yeah. And I feel like we try to do a good job about, calling that out and being true to the fact that we don't know, the entire market across the US. But yeah, I mean, I do feel fortunate that we are in the Northeast, and there's a lot of people that love craftsmanship, and I'm hoping that, what we're doing with creating awareness on social and podcasts and things like that, that we're, encouraging people to get into it. Because it, I have a lot of thoughts on this, but it's not an easy career to be in. No. And it's not something that is, there's this kind of, I don't know if we want to go down this path, but there's this kind of over glorification of, hey, you can be super wealthy in the trades. And I don't think that that's false, but I do think that there's too much focus on it in the sense that, this isn't a career that you get into because you want to be uber wealthy. This is a career that you get into because you are passionate about it. And can you make a good living on it? Of course. Can you support your family? Of course. But it's hard work. No matter
There's
what.
There's way too much struggle here to be a get rich quick scheme. That's for sure.
And it's very hard work. It's very labor intensive. And there has to be that balance between, yes, I know I can be successful. I know I can make a good living and support my family, but at the expense of the fact that I truly love working with my hands and working with my body and doing laborious work. And I think that, there needs to be a bigger conversation around that, because I think a lot of, some people get into, particular trades or careers because they think it's the fastest way to wealth. And, that's not entirely true, especially in construction related fields.
Well, if you think about it, that's where that craft of craftsmanship comes in, right? It's a craft, and you're always learning that craft. You walk on and do something different. You're learning. I'm learning. There's always a learning process to this. You're never done learning in this craft.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the best parts. And that's what I love about it is, everything we do, like I said, I challenge it. And, we have material millwork now where, I get to dig into the details with Ken and Ian and James in the shop and talk about, how we make something cooler. Like we're building this pantry right now. It's a big slat wall and there was a pocket door detailed on it. I'm like, man, it would be really cool if when that door shut, it flushed out with the face of it. So when you step back, it didn't look like there's a door there.
Nice.
And sure enough, we sourced the hardware, tested it. It works. It looks dope. And it's, and was it necessary? No, but we accomplished something different that now when that end user experiences it, and I think that's a key word is like the experience, they have a different experience.
Yeah. And I want to go back and make sure that I'm not ripping on here all the crafts people that we have across the U.S. that I'm just saying, oh, you're in Southern California, you're not that. I want to make sure and not leave that hanging for all you guys out there. But there just seems to be in your area up there, just more of an appreciation of that. And there are some great people all across the country.
Oh, 100%. It's just densely populated up here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where it's very spread out there. And, I don't know. It's something I struggle with, just at trying to position myself as someone that wants to help the industry as a whole and be, incredibly aware of all these markets and what type of people are in these trades. And yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I'm not ripping on any part of the country or any market or anyone that's in different parts that truly does love the craft. It's just that it's, at least it's something that's communicated pretty often that the Northeast is densely packed with people that appreciate craft on both sides more than other areas.
It's funny. And I learned this a few years ago. I was up in Boston speaking for the NRLA up there for the Northeastern Retail Lumber Association up there. I was talking home tech to a bunch of lumber yards that weren't ready to talk home tech yet because they're very old school.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that, but they weren't ready to consume that yet. So I've seen the other side of that too, where sometimes technology gets to be a little slower because that old world craftsmanship's the way to go.
Yeah. It's interesting, man. I think it's when you talk about tech, right? And I think about software and how things are developing so quickly. There's an enormous amount of people in the tech space for construction right now. And everyone is coming out with a new idea to do something faster. And I see a lot of it. A lot of them reach out to me. I have a friend of mine who's really in that space that constantly is getting my feedback on things. And I saw a product yesterday where it's, designed to help, commercial construction wall layout on big, concrete slabs, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, love the idea. I watched the video, and it was like, first you do this, and then this, and then you do that, and then all of a sudden it's like step 13. I'm like, dude, you lost me. Like this is just a different way of doing it. Like you were trying to change the way we do something rather than make it more efficient.
Yeah, if you're going to cut the steps by half, awesome. But if I got to go learn days of process to do the same thing.
And I think that's just like that with craftsmanship and the idea behind craftsmanship over, efficiency. I think there needs to be a balance there where, craftsmanship is very expensive. And if you can't, labor is more expensive, material is more expensive. And if you're continually putting in twice or three times as much labor to execute something at a higher level because you want it to be a higher level of craftsmanship, I mean, to me, that means that, okay, there's value to that, but there's also value to figuring out how you can get there faster. And I think of like CNC, for example, and a conversation I've had with Ken, who's my partner at Material Millwork, is that, he was a little bit against CNC in the beginning. Sure. And, he's like, I just like cutting plywood on the table saw, like working with my hands and stuff. I'm like, I get that, man. I totally understand that feeling. But the reality is, like, you could take out the monotonous work and put it on a computer controlled, CNC that's cutting all your parts and pieces.
Exactly the same. Make that part of that process more efficient, so you can turn around and then spend more time on the sexy craftsmanship stuff, the stuff that does require handwork. That when it is done by hand, there's an actual benefit to the end result. Not, I just cut that with a plywood, like on a table saw instead of a CNC. I mean, there's no. Yeah. At the end of the day, there's no no one's there. I don't want to say that no one's going to notice the difference, because that's not the point. There's really no benefit to it, I guess, is where I'm going. Yeah, there's no art to that, really. It's not something you're going to notice. And I went through that CNC transition working at cabinet shops and designing and managing cabinet shops back in the day, because that was the fight. Okay, getting away from that unisaw over into that CNC, and you could just get better yields and use equipment and be safer with it too.
Yeah. Use less material. You're maximizing, you're nesting parts and pieces. I mean, that's one of the coolest parts of it. I think, there's a framer who's got a shop that prefabricates all his walls in a shop, and was touring his shop one day, and he orders all his plywood extra, like 10-foot sheets. He orders all his 2x4s and 20-foot lengths and things like that. Yeah. And what he does, the whole house gets designed in the computer, and then it spits out the cut list. So you're maximizing your cuts out of that 2x4 to the end. When you get to the end of the job, he had a 55-gallon bucket of scrap.
How cool is that?
I mean, it's, to do that by hand would take days, because you're like, all right, which part do I cut now? Where a computer can figure that out for you. And there's you're not ruining the craftsmanship there. No. What you're doing is you're maximizing the use of material, which is helping counteract the cost of material. It's more environmentally, friendly, because you're using less material and less is being thrown away. And, and you're allowing the computer to figure that out. So you're not wasting additional labor hours to, figuring out, all right, what's the best use of this 20-foot 2x4, and end up with, a 4-foot piece that, never ends up getting used, or you put it aside to use it for, a cripple stud that, then you forget that you have that 4-foot piece, and then it's just a 4-foot piece sitting in the corner of your shop.
Absolutely. It's that piece you're holding that you never ever use, right? The one that you trip over for 2 years. So I'm going to keep that for later.
You mean like the 24 drawer boxes we've ordered incorrectly that sit in the corner of our shop that we're going to use?
Who doesn't have not? I have those here in my garage. What are you talking about?
I think anyone that's ever ordered drawer boxes for cabinetry has the mistake pile. And and it's so funny. Like, oh yeah, we'll use those. It's like, no, we won't.
Yeah, I have drawer boxes and I have a couple shower door panels here too.
Oh yeah, I had a shower door panel and I did end up reusing that.
Yeah, I've got a plan for it. I haven't used it yet, but you know what I mean. It wasn't even my fault. It was the glass company ordered it wrong, and I'm like, yeah, can't cut that down.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we built
same kind of thing.
We built a kitchenette for our office, and it's like, here's a perfect time to use material that we already have. We didn't. Right? We just ordered all new material.
Yeah,
all
it's
new
too hard.
Yeah, it's like, forget it.
It's too hard to go back to it.
Yeah, it's silly stuff like that.
Oh yeah. Well, I want to talk about power tools with you for a second because, man, there's some good stuff out there. I know you do a lot with Festool. Yeah. And tell you what, those guys, it's gorgeous stuff, my friend. It is gorgeous stuff.
When you say that, it's funny because like that's one of the reasons why I like it so much is because it looks good.
It's sexy.
And it's super sexy, man. And there's so many. So we're re-outfitting our one of our vans for home care, and it's kind of a hodgepodge of different tools, and everything does its job like 100%. Sure. Like he's got a cart, it goes in. Like the clients are like, "Oh, this is super organized." And we had a meeting, and I'm like, "Man, kind of want it to be gray and green." And they're like, "Well, that's like that cart is more money." I'm like, "I know,
yeah,
but you know what? Let's just do it." I don't, after this meeting, I don't want to talk about it anymore. Let's just, because I know it's everything's, when that cart rolls through that front door and the client's looking at it like, "Oh, well, that's really neat looking. Everything's the same. Everything's super clean. Oh, wow. Everything has its spot."
Right.
And it's like, what is that? Oh, it's just, they're like, yeah, I'm with you on that. And I mean, truthfully, I started the same way as I think everyone does. They buy the track saw, and that was the tool.
That's the crack, right? That's the first hit. It's the first hit.
I remember picking it up, and the guy that sold it to me was like, "Hey, just so you know, this is." He said that he was like, "This is like a drug." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "I just need a track saw. Like, I see the value." And then I call him. I'm like, "Can I get a sander?" And then, "Can I get another vacuum?" He's like, "Dude." And the next thing you know, it's like,
I need a domino. I'm doing a project over here. I need this. I need that.
Right. And I remember I did a deck, and I was like, that domino, I need the XL. I'm like, I didn't. I definitely didn't. But I was like, no, but I might as well have it, because I can use it now and probably use it again. And then it's just like, and then it, there's so many benefits to it.
Yeah. It's good looking stuff. And it's sexy, but it's just so finely made. It's got that German engineering, and it's hard to put a word to it, but it just does. It's just got that. It's meant for a craftsperson to use.
Yeah, you know what? I know what you're getting at, because I think about when Sedge demonstrates something where everything that the tools do, like the indicator plates and the tabs on the side of the domino, it's very. Once you know how to use it, it's super intuitive. And when Sedge uses it, he's not even looking at the thing. Yeah. It's like he knows what the tool is going to do just by the way he moves it around. And that was, and that's the part where it's like, these tools are smart. There's a lot of thought that went into it, because they knew what kind of things that they could add that would make things repeatable. Like the indicator, the side, the gauge, or the side gauges on the domino is a perfect example. And it's like, it just, everything, there was thought to everything. And even, what was it? One of the sanders has the smart mode on it. And it's just I don't know. I could sit here and
we could sit here and just drool over tools all day long. But
100%.
But I just love how they've put it together, and there's some tool companies that do a great job out there, and there's a lot of great tools out there. And if you're a homeowner out there, there's so many great brands out there. So I don't want to say bad about it, but for guys that are doing, for folks that are out there building stuff every day, this is the stuff that if you want to do that really, detailed work, it's meant for that.
No, 100%. And I think you're right. Like there's a lot of tools out there, and there is this like misconception that, you need to have particular tools or like a particular brand. It's not. It really does come down to preference. And are there benefits to using something like Festool over another tool brand? Yeah, of course. And there's probably another tool that another brand might make even better than Festool. And what it does come it comes down to preference, and going right back to what we just were talking about, it is the intuitive nature of them that make them desirable to work with, where it's like, yeah, I could go buy a $40 belt sander and do the damn thing if I need to, but if I have a really nice belt sander or a really nice tool, like I'm going to treat it a little bit differently, and it's going to have a little bit more capacity in the sense of like what I can do with it creatively. And
exactly.
And how much control I have over it, or obviously the dust collection is a big thing for them. So maybe I just don't have to worry about dust, and that was a huge thing. Especially when I started, it was just me. So I'm on a job site inside a home with a chop saw set up, and I'm not cleaning up windowsills and furniture at the end of the day. It's because I have a good dust extractor on it. I'm like, that was money. That was valuable to me.
You could be putting a kitchen in and cutting inside and not worried about, Mrs. Smith's dining room's around the corner and I'm going to have to pay to clean that up.
Right. Yeah. So,
that's a huge difference in not having to go outside to cut stuff.
Yeah. You think about like what it, we could get into the semantics of like what it costs to clean, but that's where I definitely saw a lot of the benefit, especially being a solo guy. But even now, it's, we talk about how cool it looks in the van and for the client, but all of my guys, I'm not gonna say they demand the tools, but it's like they ask about it. It's like, hey, can we get this? Can we get that? Sure. Why? It's like, well, this will make my job easier. Or, hey, this drill, I really like this drill. It's small, it's ergonomical, it's it's easy to fit in cabinets. It it has more clutch control. Like, yeah. If this stuff makes your job easier, like I've always said from the beginning, if we need a tool to make your job easier, then we will get it. And and whether that's immediately or work towards it, we will make the effort to get that tool as quickly as possible.
And it ends up being safer in the long run because they're comfortable with it. They know how it works and it's reliable.
100%.
That more control that you have, no matter what you're doing, the better off you are with it.
100%.
Would you use that stuff framing?
I have, yeah.
Yeah.
I had, I say I had, meaning like someone else in my company now has it in their truck. But I had I think it's HKC, like that cutoff saw. So I use that framing. I definitely use the chop saw framing, especially like interior framing. Not so much like if we're framing a whole house.
Sure.
But when you're doing remodeling and or smaller type projects, 100%. Yeah. To frame a whole house with a Capex miter saw, it's
overkill.
It's overkill, and I think that the saw is just not designed for it.
That's what I mean. Yeah, it's meant for that. If I'm laying out 4 layers of crown molding in the dining room, that's what that's meant for.
Yeah, and if you're cutting like a half a dozen 2x4s to frame up a small wall, yeah, totally. But if you're blasting out a 8,000 square foot frame with a hip roof and LVLs, like, can it do it? Sure. Are you going to burn the motor out? Maybe. Is it? Do you need to? Do you need to use something like that? No.
Are you going to take the Ferrari out 4x4 right?
Yeah. Some guys would. Would.
Absolutely. That's what YouTube's for.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm sure I can reference a few YouTube videos of guys doing that with a Ferrari.
Absolutely. But yeah, and one other thing I like about them too is they stay in their lane too, by the way. This isn't supposed to be some Festool commercial, but they just stay in their lane. They know what they do well. I don't see them making margarita machines or anything crazy.
No, and I had the benefit of being out there early, like before they were like considering social media at the time, and whether or not they'd have a presence on there, which is funny to think about now. But right, that was something that they talked about. Like, we were talking about tools and like what they might come out with. And they were like, no, we're not going to do that. We're not really going to get into that space. We're not going to compete with that. And they just really, like you said, they stay in their lane, or, they really just, they know what they're good at, and they're focused on that product. And, I think things like they acquired SawStop, if I am speaking correctly, but that made sense. It's like, they didn't do it and said that now we're going to put a SawStop in all our tools. It was just like, it made sense for the industry. It's something moving in a really good direction. Why not? Shaper, I think, was similar, where they were using the router motor. It's like, that's another that it was within their wheelhouse.
Sure.
But they're not, they weren't then saying, all right, we need to, create a less expensive drill or impact driver or whatever. Like they were like, no, we're going to make a really nice impact driver that is more more variable control on it,
Yeah.
Yeah,
that SawStop technology is brilliant stuff. I mean, I think we've all played around with the hot dog. I've, tried to sit there and play with that. It's cool.
It is. So I hit my finger once on it.
Really?
I did. Wait, hold on. Now I actually don't remember. And I say that because I know I've hit I've had the brake go off on me, but now I can't remember if it was a wet piece of wood or what. Yeah. But more importantly, I've seen the hot dog videos a million times. I've seen them in person, but I saw a video the other day that surfaced of a guy using his hand in a demonstration at a trade show. I'm like, who approved that?
Yeah.
And
no one.
And he was just like, watch. And he slid his hand and of course, like the brake went off, but I'm like, dude, all I thought about was years ago, I saw this Volvo commercial when they came out with the automatic braking when they saw a pedestrian, and the video was like the guy just hit the gas and someone had shut it off. And the dude hit the guy in front of him. It was like supposed to be this huge demonstration.
Yeah.
And it was totally right. And all I thought about when he put his hand, I'm like, dude, I mean, it's designed for that. And wonderful that you have the confidence, but it's not designed. It's designed for.
I'm not betting my own hand on that.
Exactly. But
yeah,
it is. I mean, regardless if it was my finger or a piece of wet wood. I mean, when it goes off, it's like, damn, that was. It
lets you know. I did the hot dog thing for TV. We were shooting a TV segment on tools, and SawStop rep was there 5 or 6 years ago, and boom.
Yeah. Oh my God. It's loud. It's like you don't even know what happened.
No.
You're just like, wait. Where's the blade?
It sounds like a 50-pound piece of steel lands on your deck of your table saw.
Yes. And then and it goes from being very loud because the blade's spinning to just dead quiet, and then everyone else gets quiet because they're like, what the hell was that?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, just my saw automatically like
eating a blade.
Eating itself.
Works well though. Works well.
Does. Yeah, for sure.
How many contractors do we know out there that have missing fingers or cut hands or most?
Yeah.
Yep. See?
Yeah. My, I'll never forget that. I was building this shed for this family, and I want to say it was like in November, because I remember it being a little cold. I had a sweatshirt on, had gloves on, and I was cutting the last piece of trim for the shed. And I was pushing, it was a Craftsman table saw.
Okay, old school.
A little old school. It was actually a shop one, so it had like the metal base bolted to it. But I used to bring it out to the job site. And so I'm pushing the last piece of trim. It's probably 2.5 inches, wide. Always push it through without a push stick, like my whole life. Like that was just, it was just what I did. But I don't typically wear gloves because I don't typically have gloves on. Yeah. And my glove wasn't super loose, but it was loose enough that it caught the index finger in the blade, and it pulled my hand like sideways across the blade, and it snapped my middle finger knuckle. It cracked that sideways, and then it hit my ring finger, and it cracked that knuckle sideways. And then the blade, I still have the line on my nail, went up my fingernail, and when it hit my knuckle, My recollection is that the blade jammed on my knuckle.
Oh, dude.
And
your knuckle was the new saw stop piece of aluminum. Yeah.
Yes.
Not good.
I reached down and I shut the table saw off and I look at my hand, and my glove had like pulled down a little bit. So
sure.
So it looked like I cut all my fingers off.
Yeah.
So I'm like,
yeah, you're F. Every word's coming. Yeah.
I throw the glove, which I never found after that, which was super weird. But I take the glove off and I throw it, and I'm like, oh my God, okay, I think I'm okay. And this is how I'm reacting in the moment. I'm like, all right, I'm good. This hurts, but I'm going to tape it up. So I go to my trailer. I'm looking for electrical tape, of course. Right?
Yep. Blue tape, electrical tape is better than blue tape. Yep.
And can't find any. So I find tape dope.
Oh.
And I'm like, all right, this should work. So I wrap up my fingers with tape dope, and it's like, no, like blood's like just pouring out of my fingers.
Yeah,
at
you
this
can't
point.
fix it.
And no one's home at the house. And so I'm like, all right, I don't know what to do here. I'm like, I need someone to help me bandage my hand. So I call the non-emergency line, and I'm like, hey, this is an emergency. And they're like, okay, what's going on? I'm like, I'm at such and such address. I cut my hand on the table saw. I just don't have any bandages, and I'm bleeding pretty bad. And I just need someone to help me come bandage my hand because no one's home, and I can't drive because there's blood spraying out of my finger.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, no problem. And so I'm sitting there, and then I call my brother. I'm like, hey, what are you up to? No, I'm sorry. I call one of my friends. I'm like, hey, what are you up to?
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, I'm out riding 4-wheelers. I'm like, all right, never mind. He goes, why? I'm like, oh, I just needed help with something, but enjoy. I'll talk to you later.
Yeah.
And later on,
dude, you're so much like me. This is scary.
Dude, later on, I told him, he goes, dude, I would have got in my truck. I'm like, no, don't worry about it. So I call my brother, and I'm like, and I tell him, I'm like, hey, this is what's going on. I just need you to come. Oh, I'm sorry. No, I haven't talked. I waited for the fire engine. So I'm like looking for the glove. Can't find the glove. I hear the fire engine coming. I'm like, oh my God, they have the sirens on. Like,
yeah, they're coming full blown. Yeah.
Right before they pull in the driveway, the homeowner comes home.
Of course.
And she's like, what's going on? I'm like, oh, I just cut my hand. Everything's okay. And she's like, are you sure? I'm like, totally fine. So the EMTs come over. They're like, what's going on? And they look at my hand. And the EMT looks at me and she goes, hey, you're in shock right now. I'm like, no, I'm good. She goes, no, let me just explain something to you. You're in shock, so you don't feel pain. This is bad. And I was like, okay. She goes, you need to come with me. I'm like, no. She's like, you have two options. You either need to drive yourself to the hospital or you get in the ambulance. And I would recommend you get in the ambulance because in about 6 minutes, you're about to feel pain that you've never felt before. So I fought with her, eventually got in the ambulance, and I call my mother at the time, but I called my brother I was like, hey, I just need to go. I need you to get a ride and pick up all my tools. I couldn't pick them up.
Sure. Yeah.
And can you put them all in the back of my truck and just bring my truck home? To which he texted me later, like, hey, do you have gas? Because your fuel gauge doesn't work. I'm like, I have no idea. And he goes, great. Yeah. Well, I'm not getting gas because I don't have any money. So hopefully I make it home. But so I'm in the ambulance and she's like, hey, I need to take your sweatshirt off. I'm like, I'll take it off. And she goes, I'm going to cut it off. And I was like beside myself. I was like, no, this is my favorite work sweatshirt. And she's like getting the scissors and she's like cutting my sweatshirt off. And then all of a sudden, pain.
Yep.
And I went into like crazy pain. I get to the hospital. I'm like, I was in so much pain. And they gave me a ton of drugs, like pain meds and anti-anxiety, because I was losing my mind. And they were like, okay, you have this isn't taking very well. And the next thing I know, I wake up and I'm, bandaged up, and they never healed correctly. I think they did a bad job splinting them, but I can't get them to fully extend straight.
Oh yeah.
So they droop. But that is fine. And
that's good. That's good.
Yeah. So there's my story.
Oh man. I'm not even going to tell mine on here because mine's brutal, but I'll tell you after the show.
All right.
But yeah, it's brutal, but we all have those. We all have those.
The only other time I really got hurt, the least that I can remember, is I was building a doghouse and I was holding the wall with my knee, and I was using a framing gun, and I went to nail the top plate on top of this little 18-inch stud for the doghouse, and the thing hit a knot, came out, and went right into the side of my knee, and it didn't hit a bone or anything, but
That's good.
I had to lift the doghouse up and like off my leg.
Ouch.
Because it shot me down to the ground essentially, but yeah.
Toenailing into the side of your knee. Nice.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I mean, it's to think about, what year it was then and like how technology let's go back to tech for a second. That's one of the benefits of tech is that it is evolving very quickly and you're seeing major advancements. It's unfortunate that it's littered with a lot of BS, but anything is.
Right.
And, and my thought on that, right, is everyone, there's a lot of talk about how, like just media and influence on media and social media and stuff like that is negative. It's like, no, the reason it's so negative is that it's always existed at this level. And, and I'm relating it to like having bad product. The reason there's always been bad product, there's not more of it. You just are more aware of it now because it's very
easier to find that information.
Exactly. So
100%. And it's crazy. And I talk about on the show this a lot is, there's bad products out there. You and I can both walk into Home Depot and Lowe's. And if somebody said, okay, I'm going to give you $500, go bring me 10 items that don't meet building code. We can all go walk around the store and go, one of those, one of those, one of those.
Yep.
But they still sell them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the challenge, I think, for builders and homeowners out there is that just because it's sold out there doesn't mean it should be used.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same thing with the car industry too, right? Like, someone will sell you a cool exhaust system that deletes the muffler and the DPF on a diesel, but it's for off-road use only.
Yeah.
Same thing. I mean, Massachusetts, like we have a strict plumbing code and it's, if it's not on the approved fixture list, it's illegal. And there's these bottle traps that, are super common to be spec'd. Every job will spec them. And my plumber's like, I can't use that. It's not mass compliant. And it's silly. But they'll like every yard will, every plumbing supply house will sell it.
Yeah.
Because it's a good looking product. And then it's, it's the same like arc fault breakers,
Oh, geez. Yeah.
It's, they're an absolute nightmare because it's like, dude, they keep tripping like you're a bad builder, your electrician sucks. It's like, no, the code requires us to put these in. And it's like, well, I want them out. It's like, then you need to sign something that you say that you're okay with being liable for us not, abiding by the code.
Yeah.
And there's clients that will pay to have us come back and take them out and swap them.
And the hard part is, due to all the crazy lawyers out there, does that form even protect you?
Right.
You know what I mean? That's the tough part.
Right. Yeah. It's like the fire that, whatever, like the panel catches fire. It's like, has nothing to do with the breaker. It's like, well, you didn't have the right breakers in there. So,
you know what I mean? It's like, such a catch-22.
But those breakers have been around for like 40 years. So pretty sure they're okay.
Yeah. Well, it's a great example. It's like how many people want to put that chandelier over the bathtub?
Everyone.
But everybody wants to do it. But it's in my Pinterest picture.
Yeah. It's like,
it doesn't mean electrical code.
Yeah. The inspector walks in. It's like, oh, nice blank plate above your bathtub.
Right. Oh, dude.
It's like, I know I had a splice I had to bury.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
He's like, yeah, I hope it's anchored to an LVL up there when you hang your chandelier from it. It's like, accurate.
Accurate. Yeah. It's every inspector sees that plate up there and just shakes their head and walks off going, I know exactly what's going to happen here.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I get it. And I understand why, these codes are in place. It's funny. I was having this conversation last night about, pregnancy. I have 3 kids and we're going to have a 4th kid.
Oh, congrats.
Thanks. And my wife is going to kill me because I've mentioned that now on 3 podcasts. And she's like, we never tell anyone.
Yeah.
And now I'm telling like 30,000 people at once.
Yeah.
But point being is like, there's all these rules about pregnancy. And it's like, you can't eat this, you can't eat that, you can't drink. It's like, no, you can drink. You just can't be an alcoholic.
Yeah.
Like
you can have that glass of wine.
Yeah.
However, you're not supposed to have the 2 magnums at one time.
Exactly. And this is and I relate it to like how building code and products are controlled. It's like, well, they have to plan for the person that goes way beyond what their intent is. It's like, hey, yeah, you can do that, but don't avoid like best practice because of it.
Yeah.
I think about like the charcoal filters, right? Like on plumbing stacks, we're not allowed to use them en masse.
Okay.
And in some states you can.
Yeah.
And some I've seen them when they put the charcoal filter underneath an island cabinet. We're not allowed to do that. We have to bow vent it. And but the charcoal filter would work, and it would actually work quite well. But the problem is like they decide that they're not allowed because then they just don't even vent the thing to the roof. Like, oh, I'll just put a charcoal filter on it and call it good. It's like, no. That is the reason they are not allowed, is because you're taking advantage of it.
Absolutely.
It's, and I think that, even tool companies, right? Like, going back to table saws, it's like, hey, you have to have the guard on your blade. It's like, sure, I'll have the guard on my blade. On my contractor version table saw out in the field, when I'm ripping a 45 on a 2x4, I'll make sure my guard is on my blade. Negative.
My guard is on this great tool bench. It's down below sitting there.
Yeah.
And it's been there for 2 years.
Right. Like, it's just
I'm
not
sorry, guys. It's just being honest.
And we actually just hired a safety officer for our company, because we were like, all right, let's get legit. We're getting bigger, faster, and I want my guys to be safe. I want my subs to be safe, my partners to be safe. I want everyone to be safe. But there's times where it's like, well, what if you don't have a place to tie off? And it's like, well, you actually don't need to tie off in that scenario. And it's like, I didn't know that. And it's like, there's, if you're creating more danger for yourself, you just have to have a plan in place. Like, what is your plan? Like, if you're going to do something, how are you taking the best measures to prevent an accident?
Yeah.
And it's like, they want you to have the table saw guard on at all times, but there's a lot of times where if that guard is on, you actually run the risk of, creating a more dangerous environment.
Yeah. Yeah. There are times that guard gets in the way and causes more headaches than if it wasn't sitting there.
Or creates bind and the piece kicks back. I mean, and listen, I'm watching all of these manufacturers like design better and better guards. And I think that it's super smart, and they have to, because the use of those guards is probably small, like very, very small. And they're just looking to go from like 1% usage to 2% and like just make an improvement, like get more people to use them, figure out how to make it safer. And it's like, and of course, like you can like SawStop's a great example. Like, all right, well, without the guard on it, like we have this in place to prevent an accident. It's like, great. There's a way to counteract the difficulties of having a guard, is having some sort of other plan to prevent accident.
Yeah, it's in our field here, it's the extension ladders, the roofs, the table saws, the air nailers. That's where the problems arise.
Yeah, and that's where like I said, when we hired the safety officer, I'm like, there's times I'm not sure what the rule is. It's like, these guys are up in a man basket on a lull. Like, what's the rule for being tied off? Are they tied off to the basket, or are they tied off to the house? And it's like scissor lifts. Like, you actually don't want to tie off in those, apparently. Yeah. And it's like, or you do when there's like this in place. So having someone, on retainer has been helpful, where it's like when we get into a new situation, he comes out, he does an inspection with us, and then he walks through like, hey, these are what we need to address, and this is how I would address it. And having a plan going into place. And it's a small investment for, hopefully a better future for everyone that's involved in our project. Yeah,
absolutely. Hey, I wanted to ask you, Nick, trades, man, we still have this trade shortage, and it seems like it's getting worse, not better. Mm-hmm. What's your predictions out there? I ask everybody that comes on in our fields here that, what do you see out there with the new kids coming into the trades? I mean, there's such a great opportunity out there for men and women.
I have a lot of feelings on this. Number one, I think that there was this huge push to make the trades more attractive and like create awareness like 5 years ago. And I think that we did that. And I think there's a massive amount of interest in the trades. But coincidentally, during the time of creating all this awareness, we ripped out the education.
Yep.
My tech school, I was talking to one of the teachers that teaches there, because we actually brought in one of the students as an intern. I was like, yeah, dude, like, he's like, hey, I'm like, send me any kid that you think is worthy of being in the trades, send him my way. I'll find something for him to do.
Yeah.
But I was chatting with him. I'm like, oh, is cabinet making still there? And he's like, no, they actually combined with house carpentry. I'm like, that's two different trades.
Yeah.
I'm like, is machine shop still there? He's like, no, that's kind of combined with welding. I'm like, also two different trades.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what about auto body? He's like, that combined with mechanics. I'm like, all right, this is getting
nobody's
out of hand.
thinking this out. Yeah.
Like, what you guys, and it's because, I shouldn't say it's because I don't know the real cause of it. There's talk that it's money, that it's this, that it's that no one wants to be in it. But then it's like, you hear all these kids that do want to be in it. Yeah. So you asked what my predictions are. I think my prediction is that labor is going to continue to become more expensive. Mm-hmm. And what that's going to do is it's going to continue to force innovation and alternative ways to build. I think that offsite construction is going to continue to grow. I think factory built homes is something that is where, dare I say, just scratching the surface on.
100% agree. 100% agree.
I think that, we are going to be required to be more efficient with material and labor. I think that's going to put a huge strain on people that have been in this industry for more than a decade, because they, quote unquote, have been doing this for more than 10 years and they have their ways of doing it. And I think that's going to be very difficult for that group of people. Yep. I think that you're going to see people that weren't necessarily looking to get into construction because of the tech backbone of it, such as automation and factories and BIM and CAD and things like that, and modeling and SolidWorks, all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
Software. And I think that we will be required to have a better outlook and path for people that do want to be in the trade. And I say that knowing that I'm struggling to work on that for my own company, in the sense, like, I want a very clear path for my people, where you come in and you are zero, like a zero, meaning like you have no experience. This is what we can offer you at that level. And if you want to get to a 1, a 2, or 3, all the way up to, say, 10, here are the things that are required of you. Here are the milestones that you need to hit. Here's the extracurricular, training that you need to take part of. Here's the things that you need to be able to do, proficiently. And that, I think, being able to communicate that and share that with someone will help counteract the desire to constantly jump ship and move to different companies, which means that people will find a place for their career and their future in a way that they have more control over.
No question.
And with that being said, I think that having the self-guided control is really important, where it's like, you think about like the people that work from home and get to create their own schedule. Like, the guys in the trades don't get to do that. They don't get to work from home. They are very much on a schedule. Like, I get that the 40-hour work week came from the assembly line, but that has been adapted. That is the norm. We don't typically work on weekends. Some guys do. Some guys work 7 days a week. But there is this understanding that in construction, you work between particular hours, like and then everything beyond that is overtime, right? Which is extra. But my point is that there's less flexibility as to when you work, where I think that's going to continue to push the pressure on us as business owners and leaders to, okay, if that's something that they can't control, they need to be in control of their career, of their earnings.
Yep.
And whether that's, their annual pay increase, whether that's a bonus structure, whether that's a career map, in order to retain people, not only within your company, but in the construction industry as a whole, people are going to individually want to understand how they get to their goal of 6 figures a year or beyond.
Yeah. I think it's going to be very interesting for, the entry level to mid-level home out there, how I think that we are just coming over that hill of the factory built home. That's really going to be where those developments can be built so much more efficiently with better yields out of all the materials, safer working environments, because you're not up there at 32 degrees
right,
with a torch taking the ice off the roof to put ice and water shield down.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point about the safety, right? Where it's, the ability to not only build it off site for the yield on materials and then the controlled environments, but it's also the safety of the guys and, an efficiency of guys, where, the other side of this is that, we do want more people in the trades, but we're not going to be able to replenish the people that are leaving the trades at the same rate. And we might never replenish that amount of people. So, while we want to continue to attract people to be in the trade, we also have to understand that we need to innovate in a way that requires less people to do this work. And there's a big argument there where it's like, we shouldn't be so focused on getting rid of the quote unquote craftsmanship. We should be focused on getting people interested in it. It's like, that's a fair point.
Yeah.
But you are never going to have the same amount of people in this, because that's just not the world we live in anymore. Everything is being automated. Everything is being technologically advanced. And we need to encourage and support that. So the more you work against that, the further and further you'll end up being behind everyone else.
So true. So true. It's interesting out there. And I think that it's going to create healthier homes as well, because we're not having to take our homes and put them in, in the conditions that they are in, with rain and weather and things like that as well. I mean, there's going to be a lot of pluses and minuses with it. Is that 40,000 square foot home going to be a modular home? Probably not.
No, but there will be parts of it that are.
Yeah.
Like I think about, Encore Casinos built a place in Boston, and my wife and I stayed there one night, and I walked in the hotel room and she's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I just need it. Like, this place is amazing." Yeah. And she's like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "The detail, like the door casing, like," and she's like, and I'm like, "And this thing was built in like 18 months, like this massive hotel."
Yeah.
And so I really started like looking at things and like I was just obsessing over it.
Well, that's how we do it. We walk into buildings and do that.
Totally. But what I realized is, I'm like, they're like, "Well, how do you think they got all this casing to be so tight?" I'm like, "This was all made in a factory, sprayed. It was totally painted. They figured out how to pre-build everything on a shop bench and fabricate it in a way that could be brought on site and installed in 20 seconds.
Yep.
And it looks dynamite. It looks like someone sat there and sanded and made that thing perfect and sprayed it and then protected it all the way through construction. It's like, no BS, dude. Like that stuff.
Especially on a commercial job site. That's usually where you see the lowest quality craftsmanship, not the highest.
Exactly. And it's like, and to think that, this is how we could build that 40,000 square foot house, is that you think about, okay, maybe that thing doesn't show up on trailers and goes together like a Lego set.
Yeah.
But maybe it comes panelized. Maybe it's built in a factory in panels, and maybe the roof is pre-cut and they can fabricate it while they're standing walls up, and then they crane it over, and maybe all the interior doors are already pre-done and pre-made.
Pre-cased on one side.
Pre-K, okay, you immediately think, oh, yeah, but pre-K is like, that's the crap you see at Home Depot. It's like, Well,
not necessarily.
Like it could be at a higher quality just because I'm not talking about $110 door. I'm talking about a $5,000 pre-hung door.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's, and it's done at a level that, can be at a very high quality.
Yeah. You and I could sit here in 20 minutes and figure out how that could be done.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is like, we are so, in this industry, we're so reactive. So we're always like facing the problem that's right in front of us, where, we need to be thinking about bigger picture. We need to be thinking about, how do we do something faster? And I'm going to use this example. I've been using it a lot, but it's, this whole hurricane down in Florida, disconnected the bridge from Naples to Sanibel Island.
Great example.
Dude, this bridge would have taken months to typically repair. Army Corps came in, fixed it in 7 days. Yeah. And the article went on to say, it's like, actually, I don't even know. I think someone referenced it on LinkedIn, but it was, well, how could they have done it in 7 days? Because they wanted to.
Yeah, they didn't go get a bunch of weird environmental permits. They came in with dump trucks and said, we need to put a bunch of rock right here. We need to fill this in. We need to build a retaining wall, and we're just going to make this thing work.
But absolutely accurate. But beyond that, it was the fact that they wanted to get it done in 7 days.
Yep.
And when you want to get something, like you want to build that hotel in 18 months, you can do it. And when I challenge my team, where it's like, hey, I don't want to build this house in 20 months. We told the client 18, we're doing it in 18. And they're like, there's just no way to do it. I'm like, that's not true. It is not true.
100%.
And you can't sit here and tell me that we can't build this house in 18 months. You have to come to me. If you came to me and said, hey, I'll build this house in 18 months, but it's going to cost you another $50,000 because I need to, pay, X amount of more people to show up, right?
Fees, labor, whatever. Yeah.
Okay. Then we address whether the $50,000 is a worthy investment or not. Don't say, like, it's always doable. We could build that. I'm going to use a terrible example, but you could build that house in a couple weeks, just like they did on.
I knew you were going there.
The Extreme Home Makeover.
Move that bus.
And listen, yeah. And I mean, listen, I know that there was problems with those homes, but the point is, there's a way to do it.
Yeah.
Whether it's right or wrong we can determine that once we figure out, like, how do we get to that end result?
Yeah.
And for us, it's quality first, and then price and schedule are organized in the second and third spot. So if it's quality and schedule, so price is going to be, hugely inflated in order to deliver on that, right?
Yeah.
And, but if we get to a point where it's like, all right, well, schedule, like, we can't continue to compress that because we just physically don't, like, there's no possible way to compress it anymore. We have 1,000 people on the job site and now everyone's working inefficiently. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't make sense. What does? Could we fabricate the house and off-site and then bring it on, in a helicopter and drop it in place, and it costs $7 million to helicopter it? Okay. Does it make sense? No. Okay, that's off the table. But the point is that's where I find most of my time is spent now, is like challenging the way we do things. And when it's, you can't do that. Okay, why not? Walk me through that. Why can't you do that? Because in my opinion, like, you could. And we talk about this in the cabinet shop too. It's like, I'll say, oh, why don't we, do this, that, and the other thing. And they're like, can't do that. I'm like, well, what if you had a piece of hardware that did this, and like the door swung that way and it did this? And they're like, yeah, but that hardware doesn't exist. I'm like,
so
you think we could make it? Well, I mean, I'm like, exactly. I'm not saying that it's the right answer. I'm saying it needs to be thought about. And when we go turn around and ask someone like, hey, can you make this hardware for us? And it's $10,000. It's like, all right, well, maybe it doesn't make sense for this one project, but is that a product that we can then go sell? Can we make 100,000 units and sell them?
Yeah.
Like, it's, and this is where I get really excited, and why I like the position I'm in with my teams now, is that I'm the one that constantly is like, you got to prove that you can't do this, because like, I get that there's if it's money, okay, how much money?
Yeah, I had that on a project. I had, this was 15 years ago. It was Bill Gates' father's house. Now, we went in, it was a trust. And I mean, this was probably the craziest job site measure. I walked in with the remodeler, and I'm the cabinet guy. We walk in, there's armed guards. They have dogs smelling my car. I mean, they're mirrors under the car like I'm at the embassy.
Oh my God.
You know, literally measuring out this kitchen with 4 guys in AR-15s and tactical vests.
What?
You know, oh yeah. So we're measuring this up, and the guy out there goes, all right, we have a month to do this kitchen remodel, and it's a big kitchen. And I'm like, all right, man, are you going to give us some time to spool up, or is this like starting tomorrow? When's the start date on thing? He goes, start date will be in a month. So in 60 days from today, this kitchen will have to be done. So I get the measurements, get the drawings, go back and head over to the CEO of the cabinet company. And I said, same kind of thing. All right, man, here's the cabinet package. I need this done in 3 weeks. He's like, we have an 8-week lead time. I said, that's not the question I asked.
Yeah, right.
What's it going to cost to get this done in 3 weeks? Well,
it's always
throw a price at it.
Well, you know, I'd have to call this guy and see if I can delay his kitchen. Then call him.
Well, how many guys want to work late so they have money for the holidays, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
What's it going to cost to, overtime, 10 hours, everybody?
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, it
can be done.
100%. And that, going back to like something we talked about earlier, is this is where we need to think differently. We need to be more creative with the constraints that are put on us in construction. I truthfully, as a builder, want to get to a point where I can look at a client and guarantee my budget and guarantee my schedule. And, and I say that year after year, and I've never been able to do it. And it's incredibly frustrating. And, and I'm not sure what your listener base is, but I'm sure a bunch of people just scoffed at me like, yeah, sure, man. Like no one's ever going to guarantee that. But I do. That is the goal. And I don't want to guarantee it because I fluffed the number. I want to guarantee it because I know that we can execute at a high level.
Yes.
Like military. Like we come in, we have a process, we follow the process. That takes, from day 0 to day 700. I mean, it's going to be every step of the way, has been figured out, and we know where the holes are, and we're going to work as a team to make sure those holes get filled. Amen,
brother. Man, where is this hour gone, man?
Bro, I don't know. These
goes quick, doesn't it?
These podcasts. Yeah. It's like every time I'm like, man,
there it goes.
If I did a podcast every day, I would just, I talk all day.
Yeah, you and me both. You and me both. What did we not hit on today, brother? Anything else you want to say?
I don't know, man. I think I actually got out a lot of what's on my mind. Nice. I'm excited about 23. Obviously we got the building company, Materia Millwork, our millwork company. Super excited about just the opportunity to expand that. Motif Media, who has been producing all of our content from video, as well as our the Modern Craftsman podcast. Yep. And of course the podcast. I mean, it's been this labor of love for 5 or 6 years now. And, we are getting to a point where we're restructuring a little bit, and getting excited. Yeah. And getting excited about, what we can do with it in the future and really position ourselves to help the industry. And that is, at the end of the day, what I hope my professional legacy leaves.
So where do people find this podcast, Nick?
On any podcast platform. So Modern Craftsman, you type that in on any platform. We are actually launched on YouTube. Okay. So we're going to be sharing all of them on YouTube, and any podcast platform.
Thanks for coming on today, brother. This is great. We'll do it again.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you.
All right, Nick Schiffer, NS Builders. Thanks for coming on today, brother. This is great. You're listening to Around the House.
Somewhere unseen and undiscovered, anywhere beyond the mean. Life is a love song, let's be lovers. We're all over the radio. Take my hand, I know where to go. All over
Hey, it's Eric G from Around the House. Are you planning a decking or siding project this year? If you are, you've got to check out my friends at Millboard. Millboard is a completely different kind of composite decking and cladding that enhances outdoor spaces with enduring distinction. Hand-molded from the finest oak, it realistically mimics the natural grain and color of premium hardwood. If you're looking for something that doesn't look like plastic and instead real wood, check out millboard.com. Make sure and check out that interview we did just a few weeks back. That's millboard.com.